Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, and a big hello to Tejas Oza in Australia. Hope I got your name right there. And he recently contacted me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey Neil, I'm starting to become a fan of your podcast," and I listened to it using YouTube. And he also went on to say that he's about to start his own video podcast called Disruptive CXO. And I have noticed that more and more people listen to this podcast, not on a podcast player while they're out for a walk, but in a minimized window on YouTube while they work. And it always blows my mind that, because you always think of YouTube as just sitting there and watching video, but more often than not, people are not watching videos. They have the browser minimized and just have the podcast on in the background. So a massive welcome to the podcast family, my friend. It's always great to connect with everybody listening. And I always say at the end of every episode, let me know your thoughts, share your insights, connect with me on LinkedIn, send me an email. It's not just lip service. I genuinely mean it and invite you to send me those messages. So welcome. So thank you for sending that message in. Now, in today's episode, I want to learn more about a company called Precisely, which you may know by its former name, which I think was SyncSort. And they recently hosted their inaugural Virtual Data Integrity Summit in conjunction with the release of a new IDC research paper that outlined the changing role of data across industries and emerging technologies. And the summit also included speakers from everyone from, I think it was MasterCard, Apria Healthcare, CreditSafe, as well as keynotes from IDC analysts. But I invited their CEO, Josh Rogers, onto the show to talk about their findings around data integrity and the trust of data within a business. But enough spoilers from me. Buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to Boston so we can speak with Josh Rogers, CEO of Precisely. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Josh. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk. Sir, in terms of my background, I'm the CEO of Precisely. I have been with the company for coming up in about a month. It will be 12 years. And I've played a number of different roles over that time. I started on the sales side of the business, leading global sales, served as president for a number of years as we kind of pointed the business towards a new trend in the industry at the time called big data. And then about 5 years ago, I became the CEO. And prior to joining Precisely, I worked in the software industry for a couple of different software businesses. I got my start in the software side of IBM's business. And if you go way back, I started my career in financial services in the investment banking and private equity space, where I was for a few years before I transitioned to software.
Cool. And you have been on an incredible journey, but equally, so has Precisely, because I read before you came on today, they went through a rebrand earlier this year. So I've got to ask, can you share why that rebrand was necessary and what the new name Precisely actually symbolizes?
Sure. No, thanks for the question. It was a big decision. You know, the previous name of the company was SyncSort, and SyncSort was actually founded in 1968. So it had been a business that had 5 decades of, a history around that name and brand, and had carved out a very powerful kind of place in the technology world, and in particular in serving large mainframe customers with data integration technologies. And that portfolio had expanded over the years, of course, but generally, I think when people thought about SyncSort, if they knew the name, they thought about it as a long-time provider in the data integration space, particularly associated with mainframe environments. And on the back of the software and data acquisition that we closed a year ago, the carve-out from Pitney Bowes, what had happened was we really had the center of gravity of the portfolio had shifted from being a largely data integration focused set of capabilities to being much more of a set of capabilities that was centered in kind of the areas of data quality, location intelligence and data enrichment. And while we still obviously have the data integration capabilities, that's a much smaller piece of our business now. And we felt like we needed a identity in a way to engage the market and our customers and prospects that would speak to the full breadth of the portfolio and the value proposition that we offer. And so we undertook, starting really in the fall of 2019, an approach to think about how we would take on a new identity. And as we went through that process, we engaged customers, we engaged our employees. We realized we wanted to communicate to the market our ability to help customers achieve this kind of trust in data that seemed to be missing in so many environments. And when we thought about the potential names out there, Precisely was one that jumped to the top of the list, because I think it just speaks to the importance of having data that you can trust, data that has integrity, that you can use to make confident business decisions. From the beginning, I really wanted to make sure that we were choosing a name that people would immediately understand. And one of the benefits of Precisely is it's a word. So many companies today have kind of partial fragments of a word they put together to create a new word, and it kind of means something, but not necessarily. And so having a word that would immediately be recognizable to folks, and I think both pique people's curiosity, but also center them in our core value proposition, was a really key goal. And I think, frankly, we were lucky enough to end up in a place that I think has gotten everyone really excited, both inside the company and outside.
And it has been a strange year as well, because say you went through the rebrand, you got that new identity, and then of course the global pandemic hit and forced a lot of brands to rebrand and reinvent themselves. I'm curious, are you seeing an increase in businesses making things like data-driven decisions now that you didn't do before your rebrand?
Sure. I mean, actually, we launched the rebrand in May. Yeah. So we had a pivotal moment in March, where obviously we had been working for a few months on the direction we were heading from a branding perspective, where we stepped back and said, is now the right time? Yeah. And we kind of looked at the options of putting things on pause, right? Because we had been thinking we would be doing a, kind of large in-person event and kind of rolling out the brand at some large industry shows, et cetera. And what we decided was no, that the business needed this new identity, and that if we needed to kind of go through a launch process that was virtual, we would. What's interesting is that the pandemic has created, all of these shifts in the way that people, both individual consumers, but also businesses operate. And overnight, you had, restaurants close. Restaurants go from largely having customers in their, venue to making most of their money from a delivery perspective or a takeout perspective. You had, these runs on consumer items like toilet paper and paper towels that were suddenly stocked out across the country or across the world. And what I think we saw was that this kind of this rapid shift in supply chain and consumer behavior caused customers to need to make our customers, enterprises, to need to make a totally, different set of decisions around how they're operating their business. And when they thought about how should they rethink their operations, the first thing they did was look to data. And how do I understand what the demand is through this new channel? How do I understand what the cost structure is for the way I was doing business? How do I understand what might be pockets of demand in other areas that I haven't historically served? And all of those things, all of those considerations were really a data analysis exercise. And so we've seen a tremendous kind of increase in digital transformation initiatives inside of our customers. In fact, people have been accelerating their investments in analytic technologies because never has data-driven decision-making been more important in many ways. So it's actually been, I'm glad we did the rebrand, but it's also been, for many of our product lines, a bit of a tailwind because people are so focused on how do I get to good data to make these kind of key operational decisions, and they need to make them right now because of the rapid shifts in behavior that the pandemic has created.
And another trend that I'm reading more and more about is data integrity. And just to get everyone listening on the same page, depending on their background, can you just tell the listeners a little bit more about exactly what data integrity is and how it's helping businesses across various industries all improve their bottom lines? And again, that is so important right now for them, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So data integrity is the notion, it's a pretty simple concept, frankly. It's the notion that the data that you're using for analysis is accurate, consistent, and contextualized. And if that is true, then you have a level of trust in that data that you can use that data to make confident business decisions. And so when you look at the data management industry over the last couple of decades, we've made huge strides in the ability to collect large volumes of data and process that data and process it, in the cloud and then share it out. And there's a number of technological advances that have kind of allowed people to tackle those technical challenges. But I think where we are today is that there's still this lack of trust. People don't know if they can believe the data they're using for analysis. And so we see kind of achieving data integrity as the key imperative for enterprises today that want to be data driven. Technology has allowed them to be able to collect vast amounts of data of wide variety. They can process it. In fact, they have an agility of processing with the cloud that they can spin up the amount of compute they need to crunch the numbers, and they can share it out to individuals inside their organization or outside pretty easily. The challenge is, can they get the data right? And so, yes, we think getting that data right is the difference between making good decisions and making bad decisions or making no decisions. And both of those are suboptimal outcomes. And so we think the more we can help customers get to data integrity, the more confident they can be in making decisions more quickly and the more money they can make.
And one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast today was after reading that IDC and Precisely recently released a report that asked, I think it was 310 business and data analysts about data integrity. But can you tell me more about that report?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it has some great insights. The first is that over half of respondents, don't have trust in the data that they're using to make decisions. Yeah. And so that's still a huge issue. The second is that one of the big challenges that drives that lack of trust is that data is trapped in various silos. More than, I think it was 95% of respondents said they're pulling data from more than 6 different silos or 6 different areas of the business to bring together to make decisions. Often they're having to interact with that data on multiple different platforms. So there's technical challenges, but there's also just kind of basic challenges of how do I fit that data together. And then the third is that, and this is one that I think is a little underreported, 86% of respondents said that they were looking to increase the use of outside data over the next 3 years. And what that means is there's a recognition in enterprises today that they're not limited to the data that they generate themselves. They can actually get greater insight and greater context if they actually go out and buy data products and complement their existing data assets with outside data. And so when you look at those 3 data points, you realize there's still a lot of work to do to get to this, to achieve data integrity and trust in data inside the enterprise. And fortunately, Precisely has a portfolio that can help customers do that. But I thought the report was great at kind of putting a spotlight on some of these issues that organizations are not only still dealing with, but in fact getting worse. One of the statements in the report says that 95% of respondents that said they're dealing with more than 6 silos said that they expect that to go to 100% as customers move to the cloud and create additional silos of data. So this is not an issue that's kind of going away. It's actually kind of getting worse as customers try to lean more into making data-driven decisions and do so in a landscape that's becoming more complex.
And were there any other key findings in that report? And did anything surprise you at all?
We're in this business every day, and so I would say the report, there wasn't anything that surprised me as much as I saw it as validation of what we see customers living through and the challenges that they're facing. if there was anything that surprised me, it was the notion of how important people are recognizing outside data to be, as well as how important location is becoming in various use cases. There was a fair amount in the report around how customers are trying to use location to help increase the context of the data they're looking at. And I'd say historically, location has played a fairly technical role for a fairly technical user. And what we're seeing is that location is now being seen as kind of a notion and a concept that can be applied to lots and lots of different analytic use cases. And of course, you see this in some of the challenges that we're facing in the pandemic, whether that be contact tracing that local governments and states are doing, or that be kind of monitoring election results, right? Location is incredibly important in both those use cases. Just to pick a couple of things that have been front of mind in the news over the last few months.
And there's a lot of talk at the moment about artificial intelligence and a lot of businesses wanting to leverage it, of course, but they do need clean data because obviously with the garbage in, garbage out, that is something that everybody wants to avoid. So I'm curious, for anyone listening that would be interested in possibly working with you, how is Precisely helping businesses with that problem with increased accuracy and consistency in their data?
Sure. Yeah, I think the way we think about artificial intelligence, and it's getting applied, throughout different channels and for customer interaction and different applications inside the enterprise, is really think about artificial intelligence as a way to speed up decision making inside the enterprise. It's using machines to help accelerate the velocity of decisions. And these decisions are based on models, generally in a machine learning context. And the way it works is people build a model with all the attributes they think affect a prediction or a decision, and then they use large data sets to train that model to make sure that it's operating in a way that's consistent with the goals of the business and leading to a positive outcome. And what we like to say is if you're feeding those models bad data, you're giving them a bad education. And if you think about the reputational risk and the business risk that could stem from a model with a bad education suddenly making a high velocity of decisions without necessarily kind of human oversight at all times, you really are at a point where you could be making things worse, not making things better. And so we really believe it's just another reason that this notion of data integrity is kind of the key imperative today. If you want to take advantage of AI strategies, if you want to leverage machine learning to help improve whether it be customer loyalty or it be supply chain management, you really have to make sure that the data is correct such that you can build models that make sense and drive the business outcome that you're looking for.
And so much has changed this year. And I suspect that one thing that we've got in common is we both kind of miss meeting people at tech conferences, having those conversations on a show floor at a busy conference. But I read that in October that you guys hosted a data integrity summit, which included speakers from MasterCard, Apria Healthcare, Credit Safe, as well as keynotes from IDC analysts. But of course, it was a virtual summit, which seems to be where every event is right now. But can you offer an overview of what people listening might have missed from not attending that virtual summit?
Sure. So, we used the summit to interact with our customers and prospects to help educate them on the data integrity market, the value of data integrity, and then how specifically Precisely could help them in their journey to achieve data integrity. The customers talked about the challenges that they have in really kind of these four pillars we refer to them as of data integrity. The first challenge is how do I integrate the data I need for the analytics I want to run. The second is how do I make sure that data is clean, accurate, and consistent. The third is how do I incorporate the notion of location, and the fourth is how do I enrich that for context. And Precisely has a series of products in each of those pillars to help customers achieve that. And certainly the customers that spoke are using one or more of our solutions to help attack challenges in each of those pillars. And so the event was a great opportunity for us to articulate to the market the importance of data integrity, how you break data integrity down into the 4 key characteristics that data needs to be able to achieve data integrity, and then a great opportunity for not us, but our customers to talk about how they're leveraging our products to achieve that. And then the final thing I'll say is we did have a big announcement from a product perspective, which was the fact that we've released a new solution called the Data Integrity Suite, which brings together all of the capabilities you need underneath integrate, verify, locate, and enrich to address those needs in a way that's as seamless as possible, but also modular. And what we see in customers is that they fund their projects based on specific business outcomes that they're looking to achieve. And those projects have a set of requirements that don't necessarily mean, hey, I've got to solve everything within data integrity from end to end. But for one project, it may be, hey, I want to incorporate location into this particular use case, or I want to get enrichment right for this particular use case, or I want to move data that's on premise into the cloud so I can run it in my cloud data warehouse. And so not only do we provide this end-to-end capability in the Data Integrity Suite, but we also have made it modular so that you can tap into whatever capability it is you need for your specific project to get going. And then as you take on additional projects, you can layer in additional modules as they make sense.
And I think we are getting towards the end of 2020 now. And as we look back over our shoulder, I think the speed of technological and business change has continued to move at breakneck speed. But as we look for life in a new year, I mean, what's next for Precisely? Is there anything that you can share about your big focus and what that's going to be in 2021?
Sure. We did the acquisition. We closed the acquisition of the Pitney Bowes software and data business on December 2nd of 2019. Yeah. We've largely integrated the businesses at this point. Certainly that's true from an organizational perspective. We've kind of rebuilt almost every system in the company to support the organization on a consistent way. And I think 2021 in many ways is about delivering on the promise of the Data Integrity Suite. There'll be a jam-packed schedule of product releases to help build out capabilities. Two of the areas that we're really focused on are cloud and machine learning, where we will, and I guess the third would be dynamic data, where we intend to bring best of breed capability for today's environment to allow people to take advantage of any of the modules in the suite in the at the time that they need in the environment that they want to deploy it. So whether that be on premise or in the cloud, and make that easier to get full value by leveraging machine learning to help the system make better decisions around data integrity such that it's not left up to the user to construct all of those rules. And then finally, to not only provide context through data enrichment and data products, but to offer data products that are continuously updated. And that help customers take advantage of things like real-time weather or real-time demographic movements in markets across the globe. And so, those product releases, I think, will not only kind of power data integrity for customers, but will give them unique capabilities they can't get anywhere else. So it'll be a busy year, jam-packed with innovation. And I think also a year in which we'll have some reps, if you will, acting as one organization after 2020 being a year that was filled with a lot of integration of the two businesses.
Well, a huge thank you for coming on the podcast today. So many great insights that you've been able to share with me from that report. But before I do let you go, for anyone that would like to dive in a little bit deeper, download the report, find you guys online, or even ask you a question, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, you just go straight to precisely.com. So we're real proud of that URL, and it's that the website that we delivered in May has got a lot of resources on it, and certainly you can get in touch with us directly from there. And I think you can find a lot of interesting information, customer use cases, and product guides around how we can help you with your journey towards data integrity.
I think, like you said, there is a lack, or there has been a lack of trust in data quality, especially around data silos. But I do think that is changing. And I love what you said about artificial intelligence there on this podcast. I think I must have had 100 different definitions of AI and what value it can offer. But yours is by far the best so far. I love what you said there about just think of it as a way of speeding up decision making. And I think that hit the nail on the head. But more than anything, just a big thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me. Really enjoyed it.
There were some big value bombs in that conversation with Josh there. The fact that 56% of their respondents indicated a general lack of trust in data quality within their organisation, and how that lack of trust can be traced back to data silos within organisations. In fact, 95% of organisations are integrating data across hybrid cloud environments. And it's data silos that inhibit data from having appropriate context, which is key when thinking about how to use that data effectively, ultimately creating a greater lack of trust. So kudos to Josh for coming on here and putting all that in a language that I can understand, and also for sharing the work that Precisely are doing there in helping businesses with the integrity of its data, so a company can then go on to make confident business decisions, because all I'm hearing right now is data-driven decisions. But I'd love to hear more about your experiences and any insights that you can share from everything that's happened to you and your business this year. So please keep those messages coming in. As always, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. A big thank you again to Tejas for connecting with me on LinkedIn and sending that lovely message. I invite you all to do exactly the same. Let's connect with each other and learn from each other, because, hey, technology works best when it brings people together. I've been saying that for over 1,400 interviews, and I genuinely believe it when I say it, and I hope you do too. But that's it for today, so thanks to everyone for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.